number one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
Here's Johnny.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 295 of Sports Card Nation. Got a guest on today, a gentleman doing big things, one of the ambassadors for the National, but this guy hits a lot of shows, including the National, and travels the country supporting the hobby, and that's Darryl Garner, but many might know him more as Dr. Collectible, and got to meet him at the National. Hope everyone had a great National if you went and are doing well. Got some cool cards, and maybe brought some money back, possibly. I actually did. I didn't spend all my budget, but I'm happy to report, too, I got my Tom Seaver rookie. I got a PSA 6. That was my big target, or my main target, I should say. Got some other stuff, but that was the big card for me, one that I had on my list last year and kind of struck out last year, but did not strike out this year. Got a really good deal on it, to be honest with you, and happy overall with the transaction. Cleveland was a lot of fun. I know there were some bumps in the road, but once you got in the building, and, I know the wife idea, but once you got in the building, it was a great show. Even though I didn't partake in it, the food trucks were very cool, and I had a great time. I ranks right up there as one of my favorite Nationals. And again, we start counting down the days, right, to the next one, which is in Chicago. So, but we're going to talk to Darryl Garner, Dr. Collectible. Here, we're going to take a quick 30-second break, and we're back with Dr. Collectible.
Hobby Hotline is the hobby's only live interactive call-in show. Join some of your favorite hobby personalities every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to discuss the hottest hobby topics. If you miss us live, catch us after the fact on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on socials at Hobby Hotline.
All right, real excited to have my next guest on the Sports Card Shop guest line. He is widely known. He's almost probably needs no introduction almost at this point, but great, positive, upbeat person, something we definitely need in the hobby, and happy to have him on. We're going to talk National. We're recording this before the Cleveland National, but it probably won't air until afterwards, so just keep that in mind. During, for those listening out there. But without further ado, Darryl Garner, or AKA Dr. Collectible, welcome.
Hey, appreciate you having me on. It's dope to be on incredible platforms that push that positivity, push the hobby, try to get the word out to the people. As it says right here, the hobby is the people. So that's what I'm all about. So I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thanks, Darryl. And that's our tagline. I came up with it probably 4 years ago. The show's maybe 5. The show's 6 years old. And obviously we all have a passion and love for the hobby and collectibles and the cards themselves, right? But
right.
It's all of us, right? Without us, there would be no hobby. So that's kind of the no sexy story. I came up with the tagline rather quickly. The hobbies of people, it's the stories behind the cards, and you're an integral part of that. It's kind of the standard start off podcast question, but this is your first time on this one. Kind of your hobby start. How did you get introduced to the hobby and that good stuff?
Yeah, so for me, the biggest thing was my father. My father got me into the hobby at a young age. He showed me all about like collecting sports cards, things of that nature. But for me, seeing my father collect, that got me into collecting video games, because once again, I say this to the people. 97, was it 96, 97? Jordan is winning his sixth ring. I'm only 6 or 7 years old at that time. So for me, I was into video games. I'm collecting, stones. I'm collecting comic books. I'm collecting anything that a kid can kind of collect. Something big for me was coins as well growing up. My family was in the military, so I had family in the military, not my mother or father, but my grandfather traveled across the world, will always bring back different type of currencies. So for me, I was always into collecting. But when it came to sports cards, it was Kobe Bryant for me. I fell in love with the game basketball through him, watching him play. And then I started collecting Kobe Bryant cards from the beginning. That was like my first couple sports cards where I would go in my dad collection, peep through them, like, oh, that's Kobe Bryant. And I'd be eating cereal. I'm not watching ESPN at this time, but I am looking at the back of these cards, and like I catch Kobe play every now and then, and it's like I read his stats. So that's how I was able to keep up with him through basketball cards, through sports cards, being able to keep up with his stats. Not only that, learning how to come up with the ratios and the numbers and the statistics. So not only I was loving sports cards, but also it was educating me as a kid. Statistics at a young age like that, when they show you that within high school. So for me, that was like my first little like getting into just collectibles and far as just into sports cards.
Awesome. You couldn't have, a great player to collect and follow. Rest in peace, obviously.
Yes, sir.
And you sound like you have a collector's gene between like coins and currencies, rocks,
Yes.
which is something I got into as well. And all the things that you mentioned, like you have that collector's gene that some of us have, comic books, even you mentioned,
Yes,
and
sir.
that sort of thing. So, you have that bug, that itch that you scratch. Today, obviously, when you're younger, when you get older, obviously you have a little more discretionary income. Has how you collect or what you collect changed as an adult, in comparatively speaking to a younger Mr. Garner?
Yeah. No, you're right. So my whole duality on collecting did change. I really started putting my own money up when I started understanding the hobby. The biggest thing for me is that I had a situation back then in my life that I went through, and sports cards helped me get out of that. The same sports cards that I was collecting as a kid got me out of that situation when I sold them. So it was almost what I call is selling my childhood. It was rough, but at the same time, I needed that. And sports cards changed my life at that time to the point where I'm like, I want to be fully invested. And I want to figure out how I want to be fully invested in this thing. So after that, I started looking at like hobby content, things of that nature. And like I said, I really started trying to understand the market, what to buy. I tried to get into flipping a little bit. But my biggest thing to me was just to collect. So my first card that I really bought out of my own money, I sold an Xbox 360. I bought one actually, no, Series X, sorry. The Xbox Series X for $500 for my birthday. Ended up selling it like 6 months later for like $1,200 on eBay. And then I bought a Kobe Bryant Fab Floor Auto for like $800. It was a little bit over $800 on eBay, raw. Sent it to Golden Auctions. They got it graded, came back at 10, pop one. I never did get a chance to see that autograph card after being graded, but it sold for like close to over $3,700. And that right there, I'm like, okay, now understanding this process, grading, and from there, it changed my whole duality of how I like collect now and how I put money into sports cards. And my biggest thing now, I'm not a flipper, anything of that, but I'm more of a collector. I like to collect. I'm like, I want to be like Ken Golden. He sells everyone's stuff on his platform, but he's collecting everything. Why? Because he's making the money by selling everyone else product, cars, things of that nature, memorabilia. That's where I want to be. I want to be a collector at the end of the day. And that's where Dr. Collectible came from. So that's the mind frame that I'm in now. compared to how I was years ago.
Yeah, and then you talk about the Kobe, the Fab Four Auto, and then listen, we all we want to make money with our cards sometimes, right? Because we can get more cards. That's the sometimes I feel like people feel bad, like saying, "Hey, I sold this for that," when you really shouldn't, right? Those transactions are what keeps the hobby going and flowing, and without no one was transacting, right, this hobby wouldn't be what it is. And you kind of you got a little bit of that bug, and it's nice when we can sell something maybe we're not as attached to buy something that we don't plan on selling. Like I'm a growing up in Brooklyn, Jackie Robinson was my guy for a long time. I didn't have the Leaf rookie, had opportunities to buy it, kind of just I'll get it another time. And then I finally said, if you don't get it now, it was starting to go up. Obviously, you're not going to get this card, John. It's behind me over this shoulder here, and never to be sold. Like when I'm not here, my son's going to get it. I'm hoping he keeps it and passes that tradition on to his future kids and that sort of thing. But those sales, right, allow us to acquire stuff that we don't have an intention to sell, stuff that's in our PC. And I sometimes people feel funny like doing that or talking about it. I don't know why, because it's just part of the hobby. Your take on that.
Yeah, man. Far as and when you say it's like my overall take on the hobby in general, just like the overall landscape, right now is to me it's everywhere. It's a good thing though. It's new people coming in, old people coming out, more back and forth. Wherever you into this hobby, I'm hoping that you in it for the joy of it, the ride, the chase, going to find that card that you want. I'm not telling you to go out there and spend your money. For me, my biggest thing for me is to let people know I'm not here to influence. I'm not here to influence anyone to tell you to go buy this, don't go do this. No, I'm here to expose the hobby to the masses, so they can take their perspective on it through great content, through that positivity. Once again, you get a lot of this bad content that's always being pushed out, things of that nature. And once again, that draws a narrative to people that don't know about the hobby, which they may steer from in the future. Or you may, that kid that you see at the card shop or that card show, you don't know if that kid is going to be the next card show owner or next card shop owner that's going to help bring opportunities in the future for many individuals. So for me, the landscape of the hobby, I think, is going the right direction. We need more great individuals to help steer that forefront with great card shows, great card shops, giving a great experience. It just doesn't take one business that's going to do this. It's going to take the community together in order to do this. And like I say, Jay Leno, he has what they say, a $3 billion card collection. I mean, hey, if he can enjoy collecting cars, then why everyone in this hobby can enjoy something by collecting it. So that's kind of like my pinpoint on where I think this hobby is going. And in the long haul, I'm hoping people can find what they want in this space. Just like I should be able to connect with someone that collects sports cars the same way someone collects crystals, the same way someone collects coins and currency. We should be able to connect as a community.
Yeah, well said, well put. And whatever you collect, like you said, Jay Leno with his car collection, we're doing sports cards, non-sports cards, whatever it might be, crystals, geology, rocks, coins, right? It's really it's a fraternity of collecting, as you
Bingo.
said. So yep. So it's important, and you do such a great job with positivity.
Someone's at my door. I've got to get that. Be right back.
Hobby News Daily is your homepage of the hobby, providing original writing, exclusive gem rate data, a daily morning minute podcast, and some of the best content creators in the hobby. Remember, hobbynewsdaily.com and at Hobby News Daily on social. Happy collecting!
We are back.
Talk about becoming Dr. Collectible. How did this all begin? That transformation, if you will, kind of speak to that process, and then we'll talk some more what current stuff. But how did that come to be?
Yes, so it all came to intuition, like after the situation I went through, and then one thing about me was like I want to create an identity for myself. Before I was doing Dr. Collectible, I was dancing and acting. So I had been in a few movies, TV shows, then been on tour for dancing. So I always kind of like had an identity for myself, and I'm like, okay, this is something completely different. How can I be different for this hobby? Be something good, but be different. My biggest thing for me was like, all right, I want to create identity because all I seen online was people posting sports cards, right? But then when I go to a show, I don't even know who is who because all I see is their hands and sports cards. You don't never see really, you wasn't seeing people faces out there besides people that was actually creating content. So that was my first thing when it came to creating my identity. Second thing was I started looking at content creators and seeing how can I be different. The biggest thing for me was when I decided to create a business, which was Dr. Collectible as well, turned into a business and a brand. I wanted to say, how can I make revenue in the hobby without having to sell a card? Because once again, that goes back to me being a collector. So then I'm like, okay, let me figure out what can I do off the trajectory of like the whole hobby. What can I do to bring something different? So I started looking back into my roots of acting and dance. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get into content creating. And I said, you know what? I don't want to be just a content creator. I want to be treated as a business. So that started turning into partnering with the card shows, partnering with the card shops, asking for equity in certain businesses in the hobby that I feel like I believe in. It's the first time I'm saying this out loud. And on your platform, I'm a 5% holder of Card Boss. So that was like my vision of what I wanted to do. I wanted not only people to accept me as a content creator or just as an influencer, but respect me as a business individual, because that's how I want to come into this. I want to collect, but also I want to be treated as a businessman in this hobby. And that's where the mindset just all kind of stirred from. Literally, I was living in my car for 2 weeks after my situation. And be honest with you, house fire situation that I had, was in my car for 2 weeks, and being in my car for 2 weeks really made me just really dive into who I was at that time. I even chose to be in that situation as well because I never been in that before. So I could have been in a hotel, things of that nature, but my mindset at that point was to create a business. I was willing to put the $125 into my business and sit in my car and not have gas in my tank. It sounds crazy, but that's how much I believed in my dream, you know? So that's where all that stirred from at the beginning, and how Dr. Collectible became a dream into a reality. Had to put the dream in place first, had to have that imagination as an adult. That's what we don't want to lose is imagination. Kids got it. That's why they can think so far and move so far and think light years ahead. But then when you come in as an adult, you start looking at things realistically and start looking things for what they are and not realizing like, hey, excuse my language when I say this, but you can turn shit into sugar. Like, seriously, if you really put your mindset to it. So that's why all the Dr. Collectibles started off from, with me and that passion and just being like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to be a business individual. And I just took that approach.
Yeah, like you said, you had a vision, you had a plan, you just had to put the things in order to get the priorities right. And here you are. I'm a venture, and you don't live in your car anymore, thankfully. But, keeps things in perspective, right? That no matter what I like the message there, Darryl, is like no matter what, what your state of life is in the moment, right? That doesn't have to be the end all or be all of it. You can get out of that. You can move higher. You
Yes,
just
sir.
like you said, you gotta have a plan. You gotta have a vision. You gotta have even a little imagination, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes our dreams might even sound too big for us, but that doesn't mean we can't go for it. And I think that's an important message there as well.
Thank you,
Your
sir.
travel and your travel schedule, like you're at most of the big shows, other shows they're not always the big ones either. You do a lot of traveling. Talk about the grind of that. Is it tough? I mean, listen. Card shows are fun. I'm not arguing that fact. I love them myself, but to do it as much as you do, right? It's while it's fun, there's also a lot of work and blood, sweat, and tears that goes
Yes,
into
sir.
that kind of schedule. Kind of talk to the grind of that, of those appearances and traveling and making, it's almost every weekend it seems like where I see you, you're in a different locale. But who better to talk about it than the person doing it? So go ahead
Yes,
there.
sir. Yeah. It is a grind. I'm gonna be honest with you. It is. Yes. It's all fun and games. I love what I do. Being able to travel, see the world. But before actually getting into that lane, I was working 3 jobs. I was working at Cracker Barrel as retail. I was working overnight on movie sets, doing wardrobe, and I was also, what else I was doing? I was a DJ for weddings for like 5 years, kind of before that time. So that's that mindset that I have, that Mamba mentality. Like every day, I should be able to wake up and want to live, breathe, and what I'm doing at all times. And that's the approach that I always try to take. Um, I mean, it got to the point where a lot of people ask me like why I wear glasses sometimes at shows, but like sometimes I do look tired. I am exhausted. I'm gonna be honest with you sometimes, and sometimes I want to hide that while I'm on camera in HD, and guys are looking at me on the camera, and I'm putting out content like, "Yo, why you look so tired?" Yes, because I'm exhausted from traveling different time zones. I really found that out in the past like two and a half years, how rough that can be on the body. Um, and how my time frame is just off sometimes. But as a businessman, you want to grind, you want to get at it. And I take everything as a blessing as well because I'm able to see this world for what it is with my own lens. And that's why I've learned a lot from traveling. And that's the blessing that comes with it. I personally had got a I worked on a partnership. I was so exhausted at one time. I reached out to G Fuel, which I have a partnership with. They are an energy drink, and doing work with them with like sports. Shout out to Mark Zablo. He put me in a great situation with them, and I was doing content. They wanted me to go out and do content for this football event that had quarterbacks in it, high school quarterbacks, and it was for G Fuel. After that, I tried it. It's an all natural drink, and from there, I started feeling better at these shows. Switching it up from that. Also wearing comfortable shoes. That's something I do as well. I'm not wearing my best shoes at shows. Yes, I like to get fresh, things of that nature, but I'm dressing very comfortable. That's something else that I have to learn in the process. So just them little things, once again, picking out an energy drink to try to partner with and bring them into the hobby, but at the same time, utilizing it seriously. Like, I'm not just saying I got a partnership with this company, but I'm also utilizing it on a daily basis. So for me, that grind, that grit was already like built in me. And I knew when the time happened for me to be able to go out and do them things and travel, I was going to be ready, but I didn't expect it to be overwhelming as it is sometimes, because I can find myself in Florida and Miami, and literally I'm flying across the country to LA, which is crazy. Shout out to Rizzo Sports, doing work with them out there. So traveling is a blessing, but yeah, it can get hectic at times.
Well, I appreciate you being honest, right? A lot of times, people in the industry or the hobby, they want to talk about all the W's and what you do. It is tiring, man. Listen, I'm going to get back from the national here at the end of this coming week, and I got to
Right.
go back to work. Right, I'm that first day, probably the first couple. Heck with the first day, first couple days, I'm gonna be dragging. Like that's and I'm older than you, but you're
Yes,
also
sir.
like you said, you're a natural grinder. Like you said, holding down 3 jobs at different times of day. Like I don't know when you slept, man, but God bless you.
Yeah.
But so you have that instilled in you, like that grind mentality. I mean, where did it come from? Was it parents? Was it a combination of things? Where did that hey, I'm working as much of the day as I can
Yeah.
get away with and still function. Where did that get instilled in you?
So it's two parts to that. Yes, my mother and father. Shout out to my mother, Terry Greenwood, strong individual. I mean, her name is on the back of my car as well as my father. Um, them two have instilled everything in me from putting me into private school to public school. Been through everything from playing sports. They made sure I was active. They did everything they could. My mom was working like 2 jobs. My dad worked 1 job, but he taking me to school, taking me to practice. Sometimes I only see my mom at night when she comes home from working 2 jobs. But they did everything they could to make sure that I had a great life. And also the community of my family was a big part of that as well. The other thing was me moving from Illinois to Georgia. I moved from East St. Louis to Atlanta. I've been here for about 15 years now, and I have nobody here besides my sister and a few of my friends that I grew up with, and some very close individuals that I call friends as well, that I found out here. So I had no choice. When I moved out of my mom's crib, I knew it was like around 23. My mom said, "Hey, you can move out when you're ready." And I made sure that I didn't want to come back knocking on my mom's door. And she was gonna look at me like, "Hey, was you ready?" That's the last thing that I want to do. So that's where that grind comes from. Being able to show my mom and father like, "Yo, what y'all did all y'all life to get me right as an individual, as an adult. Yes, I'm going to show y'all that. Yes, I'm going to put that out to the world. Whether if it's working, whether if it's traveling, whether if it's whatever." But that's where that grind comes from. Two of my parents, and like I say, coming from East St. Louis, Illinois, not one of the best places to grow up. I love that city. I love it. Great food, great people, but at the same time, it's a big struggle. One of the most feared cities in the country. Not only that, so being able to grow up there was rough, and not knowing that if I'm gonna pass 21. I had friends down in high school. While I was in college, like even when I went off to traveling, I come back in town and there's something going on, something happening to a person I grew up with. So once again, that grind makes me not want to go back to that. That was my big reason of moving as well. So that's where that comes from. My parents, where I grew up from, and me making that transition of becoming a man when I decided to move to Atlanta.
I appreciate you, man. Giving respect and shine to your parents. For getting you prepared, right, to be your own man, and you want to honor them by being the best man you can be, right? Not that like
Yes,
if,
sir.
if something didn't work out, you had to come back home. It don't mean anyone failed. It's just
Right.
a moment in time. But
Yes, sir.
you still, like you said, your mom said, "Hey, when you're ready, you'll know it," or take that leap. Um, and you want to honor their, how they raised you by being successful, which
Yep.
you are, and that's a testament to your work ethic, your mindset, and I'm sure obviously they're proud of you. I appreciate hearing you, paying your respects back to them with mentioning them on the back of your Topps card. You know, you didn't have to necessarily do that, but you felt in your heart it was the right and thing to do, and I'm sure that got them, you know, emotional and even more proud. But it's nice hearing those stories, right? Sometimes we neglect to you know, honor those who made it possible for us to the things we do, but that you don't fall into that category. You do you do care. It's important to you, and you know, without them, right, you wouldn't be where you are. I got to ask you, you know, we talked about the guy. I also appreciate you saying, hey, I'm tired. Listen, dude, I'm traveling. I'm going from one coast to the next coast. Like, I don't care how old you are, 25, 55, 35, 45. That's tiring for anyone. It's refreshing to hear you say, listen, I'm a grinder, but I get tired too. I'm human. I'm not I'm mortal, and to admit that, right? Like, cut me a little slack here. I'm working this hard. I'm gonna be tired. Nothing wrong with that. All right, that was fun catching up with Darryl Garner, aka Dr. Collectible. Again, we recorded that before the National. I wound up meeting him and talking with him at the National. Really great guy, doing great things. And if you like that conversation, I got good news, because that was only part 1. We'll be back with part 2 next week. But for now, let's get our Hobby is the People announcer and some closing thoughts, and we'll wrap up the episode.
Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
This is Mike Summer from the Wax Pack Hero Sports Card Minute. Don't forget, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
That's a wrap for this week. Huge thanks to you, the listeners out there, because without you, there is no us. If you like the show, we truly appreciate positive reviews. Big ups to our great guests who drive the show and our awesome sponsors who make it all possible. Sports Card Nation will be back next week, but don't forget to catch either Hobby Quick Hits or Card Mentions coming up on Monday. I'll leave you with this. How do we change the world? One random act of kindness at a time. Remember, the hobby is the people.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.